Meet the greatest grandfather of all of Asia, the man with the most wives and concubines in history, Genghis Khan, a fierce warrior and brilliant strategist who conquered most of Asia and Europe. In this video, we explore his legendary journey and lasting impact on Asia and Europe, and reveal a surprising twist at the end. Could you be related to Genghis Khan? Long ago, in the wild and frozen lands between modern Mongolia and Siberia, a little baby boy was born with a bloody surprise in his chubby little hand. Legend has it that this tiny terror, later known as Genghis Khan, was clutching a blood clot in his hand upon arrival into the world. And if that wasn't enough of a rough start, his mother was kidnapped by his father and forced into wedlock. To make matters worse, Temujin, as he was known at the time, grew up in a time and place where violence and thievery were the norms. Imagine dozens of warring nomadic tribes fighting and stealing from one another with no end in sight. As a result, Temujin's childhood was far from idyllic. Before he even turned 10, his father was poisoned by a rival clan. To make matters worse, Temujin's clan deserted him, his mom, and his 6 siblings. They were more interested in avoiding the hassle of feeding extra mouths than sticking by their kin. After taking his older half-brother in a vicious battle royale, Temujin emerged victorious and assumed control of his family's ragtag, dirt-poor household. But fate wasn't done with our hero yet. Soon after, he was snatched up by the very same clan that had abandoned him and forced into slavery. But like any good underdog story, Temujin wasn't about to go down without a fight. He managed to break free and, in true romantic fashion, fell for a lovely lass named Borta. Together, they would go on to have 4 strapping sons and a slew of daughters whose names have been lost to time. However, their love story was not without drama. Borta was kidnapped, and Temujin bravely rallied his troops to mount a daring rescue. After this heroic feat, he began building alliances and earning a reputation as a fierce warrior, attracting an ever-growing band of followers. We know all this thanks to The Secret History of the Mongols, which was written soon after Genghis Khan's death, and provides a glimpse into the fascinating childhood of this larger-than-life figure. Temujin wasn't one to follow the status quo. Instead of handing out high-up positions to his family members, he appointed capable allies to key positions, which was practically unheard of at the time. And when it came to his enemies, he didn't mess around. He took out their leaders and brought the remaining members into his clan. Talk about a hostile takeover. Temujin was a man who knew how to lead. He even implemented a no looting until we've won policy, ensuring that his warriors stayed focused on the ultimate prize. He also organized his fighters into groups of 10, regardless of whether or not they were related by blood. Now that's what I call teamwork. Despite being an animist himself, Temujin attracted followers from all walks of life. Christians, Muslims, and Buddhists all flocked to his side, drawn in by his charisma and military prowess. By 1205, he had triumphed over all of his rivals, including his former friend Jamuka. Just a year later, he summoned representatives from every corner of his vast territory and formed a nation that would eventually become the size of modern-day Mongolia. It was at this moment that he was bestowed the title Genghis Khan, which roughly translates to universal ruler. And so began the legend of the one and only Genghis Khan. With 1 million people under his rule, Genghis Khan had his hands full, but being the brutal leader that he was, he wasted no time in shaking things up. To prevent the all-too-common tribal warfare, he nixed the whole aristocratic titles thing. That's right, your birthright no longer mattered. But that was just the start. He also made sure that women weren't being sold or kidnapped, put a stop to any Mongol enslavement, and made stealing livestock punishable by death. Because let's face it, you don't mess with a guy like Genghis. But it wasn't all about being tough. Genghis Khan had a soft side too. He recognized the importance of education, so he ordered the adoption of a writing system and conducted regular censuses to keep tabs on his people. And when it came to foreign relations, he was all about diplomatic immunity, granting it to foreign ambassadors left and right. Oh, and let's not forget that he was all about freedom of religion way before it was politically correct. When Genghis Khan was done ruling Mongolia, he figured why not try his hand at ruling the rest of the world? So he packed up his army, which was just a bunch of horse-riding, arrow-shooting, cold-blooded killers, and headed for northwestern China. After some minor skirmishes, the Mongols were ready to take on the big dogs, the Xijia Kingdom. But here's the thing about the Mongols. They didn't believe in supply trains. Nope, just a bunch of horses and a whole lot of determination. And let's not forget about their signature tactic, false withdrawal. So there they were at the doorstep of the Xijia capital, Yinshuan. The Mongols pretended to retreat, and the Xijia army fell for the bait, hook, line, and sinker. But then the Mongols initiated a siege, which didn't go quite as planned. They tried to flood the city, but were unsuccessful. However, the Xijia ruler was so impressed with Genghis Khan's army that he decided to submit and present a tribute. I mean, who wouldn't want to pay tribute to a group of guys who can ride horses like nobody's business? Following their successful campaign against the Xijia kingdom, Genghis Khan and his army turned their attention towards the Jin dynasty of northern China. The Jin ruler made the grave mistake of underestimating the Mongols and demanded Genghis Khan's submission. From 1211 to 1214, the Mongols waged a fierce war and ravaged the countryside, causing food shortages and forcing refugees to seek shelter in cities. The Jin army, desperate to quell the rebellion, ended up killing tens of thousands of its people. In 1214, the Mongols besieged Chengdu, the capital of the Jin dynasty, and the Jin ruler agreed to hand over a significant amount of silk, silver, gold, and horses. However, when the Jin ruler subsequently violated their agreement and moved his court south to the city of Kaifeng, Genghis Khan saw it as a breach of trust. With the help of Jin deserters, he laid siege to Chengdu and sacked the city to the ground, showing no mercy. This marked another significant victory for the Mongols and solidified Genghis Khan's reputation as a fearsome conqueror. In 1219, Genghis Khan led his army to fight against the Khwarezm Empire, which covers present-day Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. The Sultan had earlier agreed to a trade treaty, but when the first caravan arrived, things went south quickly. The goods were stolen, and the merchants were killed. To make matters worse, the Sultan ordered the killing of some of Genghis Khan's ambassadors, and that was the last straw for the Mongols. Despite being outnumbered, the Mongol horde launched a ferocious attack on the Khwarezm cities, including Bukhara, Samarkand, and Urgench. During the attacks, skilled workers like carpenters and jewelers were often spared, while the aristocrats and soldiers who resisted were killed. The unskilled workers, on the other hand, were used as human shields during the next assault, which was one of the cruelest tragedies in history. After a successful campaign against the Khwarezm Empire, Genghis Khan returned to Mongolia in 1225, having expanded his territory from the Sea of Japan to the Caspian Sea. But he wasn't content to rest on his laurels for long. He turned his attention back to the Xijia kingdom, which had refused to contribute troops to the Khwarezm invasion. Unfortunately, in early 1227, Genghis Khan suffered a serious injury when he was thrown from his horse, causing internal injuries. Despite his failing health, he continued to lead the campaign. Sadly, Genghis Khan passed away on August 18, 1227, just before the Xijia were crushed. Genghis Khan's unprecedented conquests connected Eastern and Western civilizations in ways never before seen. His descendants, including Ogedei and Kublai, carried on his legacy as prolific conquerors, seizing control of Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and China, among other places. The Mongols even went as far as invading Japan and Java before their empire eventually crumbled in the 14th century. Remarkably, Genghis Khan's last ruling descendant was not deposed until 1920. His impact on world history is still felt today. Throughout his life, Genghis Khan had numerous children and wives, leading to a large and extended family. According to historical records, Genghis Khan had 6 wives and over 500 concubines. He had a total of 11 kids that were considered children, of which 4 were sons: Juchi, Jagatai, Ogedai, and Toyui, who were also important leaders in the Mongol Empire. Genghis Khan had many daughters, some of whom were married off to allies and other important officials in the empire. One of the most notable descendants of Genghis Khan was Kublai Khan, who was the 5th Khagan of the Mongol Empire and the founder of the Yuan dynasty in China. With over 16 million descendants and due to the extensive nature of Genghis Khan's family, it is difficult to estimate the total number of people related to Khan himself. According to some estimates, as much as 0.5% of the world's population and 1 in 12 males throughout Asia are related to Genghis Khan.